VeeFam, welcome back to another episode of the VeeFam Sessions. My name is Mr. Messer, but you can call me Rob, and I am so privileged to be joined tonight by author, father, VeeFriend, Hangout Hawk, Gift Goat, public relations guru, journalist, all of the above, Mr. Anthony Massucci, aka Hi Anthony, aka Tony. Anthony, thank you so much for being here. How are you today?
Rob, I am so good. Man, it was a late night last night, and I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm back for more.
Well, you're doing the whole book tour thing. Like that's
That's
what
right.
happens
That's
when you're number one on an Amazon list, my friend.
Oh my God, it's great. I actually had this made today just for you.
Okay, I couldn't tell if that was a poster or you like AI'd that in.
Totally poster. Like it's just
I love that.
went to FedEx.
I'm all like, you know me. I'm all about post-its and like glue sticking things together. Like I still have post-its up there forever.
I mean, it's lit.
I got this thing made at CVS. I don't if you're listening, you can't hear me, but I am or you can't see, but I am pointing to my
What does it do?
VFam Sessions poster that I got made going to VCon 1 from CVS, like print shop
And it
or
works.
Walgreens, and I've just used it ever since. Why not?
We're the print shop boys. And I went to FedEx today, and I got this. Boom. It's a beautiful thing. It's old tech.
So
It's
happy
old
to
tech. It's hard to beat old tech.
it is.
It works.
It stands the test of time.
I'm gonna fax this to you tomorrow.
So much to dive in. So much to dive into, but I like to start at the beginning. And you know, your book, which we're going to get into in a little bit, is probably going to touch on some of this. But if you would do us the pleasure and just give us like the 55-second overview of your come up before you ever got into Web3, before you ever heard of the name of Gary V.
Um, I was
So
a
real Cliff Notes version.
I was a journalist. So in my adult life, I've been a journalist, most of it. Bloomberg, I started in 96 covering general assignment, then went to technology, and eventually you had that internet bubble and the internet burst, and then that blended, and I covered that for a while. Then the economy peaked and burst, and I covered that. And then I started covering social media right around 2008, 9, 10, in that zone. Um, and then when my second kid was born, I shifted into public relations. So journalism by trade, college, et cetera, et cetera. Before college, journalism was my bag. Then shifted into public relations about 10, 12 years ago, and I've been doing that ever since.
Did you grow up in Florida?
Yeah, I grew up in South Florida. I was born in Brooklyn, and when I was 3, my folks moved to South Florida, and that's where I went to grade school, middle school, high school, and then I went to college at the University of Florida for journalism. Go Gators! I was really excited to go to college there as a kid, and it worked out really well because it was a great journalism school, and that was my path. I was actually editor of my grade school paper, high school paper, in college, that kind of thing.
Oh wow. That was kind of my next question. Was it the writing on the wall for you to take this path?
No pun intended.
And I guess it was.
It was. It really was. I mean, I was literally like in grade school, I was the Dear Abby of my grade school newspaper. Like me and somebody else wrote the letters, then answered the letters and that kind of thing. And then middle school, honestly, is a blur. I don't remember but journalism was my thing. And then in high school editor, sports, business, covered sports news, business news, entertainment, interviewed musicians like rock bands that would come through. I interviewed comics, comedians that would come through. Just that kind of thing. It was really, it was so much fun. So I've really been into finding out what makes somebody tick. That always intrigued me. Like we're doing? Like what's somebody's story? What gets them out of bed in the morning? What gets them excited? And then what keeps them up at night? Right? Like what is it? Whether it's a CEO or a sports or an athlete or a coach, it's sort of the same angle you're going after. What is it that sparks this person? Right? What gets them excited about life? What gets them happy? What gets them enthused? And then I've always been intrigued to find out that story, kind of getting to somebody's truth, right? And so, yeah, it was just my thing. And journalism was very much a good fit for me. It worked out well. Something I was interested in. I was covering high school sports in high school as a 16, 17-year-old driving around covering high school Friday night football games, driving back to the newspaper to file the story by 11 o'clock. If the story got in by 11, I was in the paper the next day. If I didn't get it in on time, there was no story the next day. And I liked
Mm,
that immediate gratification of covering a story, interviewing somebody, going to an event, getting the news done, getting it into the paper, and then seeing the result the next morning in the paper. Coincidentally, as a kid, I also mowed lawns, right? And so, like, to me, that was kind of the same equation, different thing. Like mowing a lawn, you see the immediate result. Writing a story, you get the
right.
immediate result. It was like that same sort of gratification thing. So I hope that
Do
helps to
you
give you a backstory of where I came from.
why, I don't know if it's one moment in time or a gradual pivot, but what made you go from uh, you know, journalism to PR, specifically starting your own firm, which is a whole other ball game.
Well,
I'm
initially it
curious.
was wanting to spend more time with my kids, right? So journalism is a little bit of a demanding profession, a lot of hours, long hours. I always say it's like you're a surgeon, but you're not saving lives. So there's that demanding schedule
Hmm.
of covering a story, news breaks. When Ronald Reagan died, I had to leave some weekend vacation that I was on and come back to the studio and get in studio and go on air and talk about it, right? Like, if there was a tech merger, like Dell, for example, and Compaq Computer, like they were getting together, so that cut something short. So it was like based on what I was covering as a journalist, that was my responsibility to cover the news of that space. So my ex-wife and I were both in journalism at the time. We were married and we wanted to um, start a family, and we were starting a family and had one kid. Another kid was coming, and so she was doing well in her career as I was, but we decided to champion her career as a female. Females. She had a great opportunity, so I basically took that opportunity to leave journalism to go into public relations, and she stayed in journalism. And a few years later, we were divorced, and I stayed in PR. She's still in journalism. And then about 5 years after that, there was an opportunity for me to. I was working at a firm based in Alexandria, Virginia, a PR firm covering mutual funds. So bringing mutual fund managers to business journalists. I had been a business journalist. It was kind of a cool segue from journalism into PR, kind of different chair at the same table, so to speak. And that
Hmm.
makes sense. And then an opportunity came up where I was able to get a couple of small clients. The firm where I was at, that worked as long as because it wasn't in the same industry. So I was able to do PR over here while still doing PR over here for the firm. And
Got it.
eventually the opportunity
Cool.
to create that bridged into me creating my own company. So I was able to stay at another firm while growing my own clients, and then that lended to me doing my own thing. So me bridging into my own firm. So it was actually an easy-ish transition
Transition.
from,
Yeah.
there wasn't a big risk. I was able to build it over, say, 2 or 3 years so that it just bridged to the opportunity.
And that's in 2014. And we're talking about this, and I don't know if you know this. I my major in undergrad was PR.
Oh, cool. I didn't know.
And I've found that in conversations with just random people
Right.
in my travels, people really didn't know exactly what that entailed.
Yeah.
So would you tell us, like, what is public relations? What does a publicist do?
I mean, in a nutshell, you're just helping someone tell their story to the world, right? Rob Messer, you want to be famous. I'm your PR guy. I'm going to make sure the world finds out who you are. What is it that you do? You're a rock star, you're uh, an athlete, or you have your own firm, right? So in essence, you're paying a publicist or a public relations person to spread the word of what you do, far and wide. It could be very segmented. Hey, I want to just be featured in local news, or I want to be on a podcast, right? Or throw a message, whatever it is. It's so measuring the the this sort of the message to an audience. How big a message do you want to share? How wide do you want to throw that net? How many people do you want to know that you exist? It could be something like you have a plumbing business and you just want your local town to know that you're a great plumber, right? So how does that work? Is there a trade publication? Let's get you in the trade publication. Let's get you on the plumbing podcast circuit, so to speak, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. And it could be some clients are looking for a lot of publicity. Some are looking very segmented. Hey, I just want trade publications. I just want people to know. Like I had one client. It was a divorce attorney who his clients were all famous people. So he's representing people getting a divorce who are famous, in either celebrity famous or just famous in the world that they travel in. But his clients couldn't, because they were sort of private. You couldn't refer people to the clients for references. So how do you spread the word of that person? Hey, they're a great divorce attorney. How do you build up their reputation so that people understand they're good at what they do, without saying, hey, yeah, call some of their clients. They'll tell you how great they are. Because those clients couldn't tell them how great. Right. So it
Right.
just depends on the challenge of, but in a nutshell, you're just megaphoning somebody's success to a larger audience. If that makes sense.
I I think that's a great way to package it. Um, my particular one, I always thought I wanted to work in the movie industry and entertainment field, and
Right.
so I was doing work in New York for distribution companies
York, Pennsylvania.
At a college. Sorry?
York, PA. York, Pennsylvania.
No, in New York, in
Oh,
this New York
gotcha.
City. Um, and I rapidly found out that I don't want to like have two. At the time it was Blackberries. Like I don't want to have run around with two Blackberries in my
Yes,
hand, like fetching people's coffee, like worrying about like where actors' drivers are, or, like why they're late. Like no, it's just not. It was way too superficial. I know that's just one very particular niche
I get it.
of
I had a
the
BlackBerry and an iPhone at some point in 2008, 9, 10, something like that.
seven.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, you found VeeFriends or Gary V. When was the first time you remember hearing the name Gary V?
It was 2009. I was a social media journalist. I know that kind of sounds like an oxymoron, but I had left Bloomberg, where I was a technology journalist covering like Apple and Yahoo and eBay, right? And then I shifted to this company called Daily Finance, which was owned by America Online, which eventually was gobbled up by Time Warner. So social media was sort of like an up and coming tech space, in the tech space, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, all that stuff, right? So my job, which was so much fun, I liked early tech. So like 99, 2000, those were early days of the tech boom. And then in 2008, 2009, 2010, it was like a second stage of tech boom, but this time was very specific to social media companies. So my job was to cover social media, the emergence of Twitter, for example, the emergence of Facebook, which now are quite obvious, but at the time it wasn't clear that those would be success. Like I wrote a column about Twitter hitting $1 billion in revenue or in market cap. And then a different guy who I worked with wrote a column saying there's no way Twitter would ever be worth $1 billion. And I looked upon as like the foolish one to think it would be. And then he was, anyway, long story short, it sold for 44 billion to
Yeah.
Elon Musk. But in those early days, I saw a tweet on Twitter, and I was like big into Twitter at that time, from Gary V, that he would be at a bowling alley in New York City on a random weeknight, Tuesday or Wednesday, and come show up to hang out. And sitting behind a keyboard in Manhattan covering social media, which was sort of like out there, it was a great opportunity to meet a real life person who was up and coming in the space. At the time, Ashton Kutcher, Oprah, and CNN were vying to be the first account on Twitter to have 1 million
Did a
followers,
million.
right?
I remember that.
And so then Gary V perks up, and I was like, hey, here's a chance to go meet somebody who's real, who's not Ashton or Oprah, but someone accessible. So I went to the bowling alley, and Gary was there. And honestly, it was like 8, 10, 12 people. It was like, let's say 10 people showed up. We had a good time hanging out, talking tech, talking MySpace, whatever was going on back then. And I got to know Gary a bit that night, and I came back and wrote a story, and so that's how I met him initially.
And this is something he tweeted.
Well, he
tweeted
tweeted like if me or you wanted to have a hangout tonight and see who would show up. It was just like, hey, I'm going to be at a bowling alley. Come. He didn't specify who, where, what. Just Come on out, right? Rob
Right.
Messer's having a meetup at 8 o'clock at the local bowling shop, and that's how I met him. So, and then actually years later, when I was at Hangout Hawk on the first call, I got on the digitally the space with Gary, and he had remembered. So I brought up the meeting him at the bowling alley, and he remembered whatever that was, 12 years later, having met in 2009 at the bowling alley. So uh, it's kind of cool how that blended. So in that midst of all that time, the NFTs came out and all that stuff, and I jumped in.
That's probably one of the earliest meetings I've ever heard someone meeting
Yes.
Gary. 2009 is
Yeah, and it was cool because
pretty early.
I had covered tech really well for Bloomberg News, Apple, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Larry Ellison at Oracle. So going over to AOL to cover social media was like another chance to cover the early stages of emerging technology. And so meeting Gary, although now it's all pretty relevant to where we are here, it just seemed like a shot in the dark. Like, oh, this is so cool, and he had the wine thing going on in the show, and so yeah, I was just happy to be able to shake hands and hang out with somebody who's doing it in real life, not somebody digital, right? Some digital person
Right.
out there. So
And you at this point have probably interviewed and spoken with a lot of people
right,
that make it, don't make it, and everything in between. I mean, this is going back to, however many years that is, but you remember in the moment being like, there's something to this guy, he's onto something, like something about his energy,
it was really. I
any
mean,
of
for
that?
Gary, as now, it's an energy, right? Look, I mean, Gary could be like, let's all go move that car. We're like, all right, let's do it. How many guys do we need? 8? All right, we can do it. That's his style. That's his energy. He kind of wills to some degree, but obviously he has skills and talents. No, but it's just like that. Initially, what's cool about Gary is just the energy of what he's talking about, and then executing on it. And so when it came time, I had followed Gary after that meeting through the years, and so when the NFT opportunity came up, just like most of us, it was a bit of a risk. There was a roll of the dice. What is this thing going to work? I remember watching YouTube videos speculating on the value of NFTs, including the VeeFriends team and the VeeFriends characters, right, and all that. And what would it be, and how would it manifest, and how would this materialize, and how could we measure the value for real? Like, what is it really? And there were some shades of early days tech, like let's say 99, 2000, where eyeballs were counted, spaces, faces were counted, like, and so value would go up based on number of free accounts you could sign up for your company, right? And so then NFTs had that similar feel, but also like a little bit of a gold rush is a bad way to put it, but just like, I mean, the gold rush was people rushing off to get gold in San Francisco, right? And then the internet emergence was a bunch of people trying to make money on growing an internet company. And then the NFTs were a bunch of people trying to make money on, executing the NFT space. So, I mean, there's obviously opportunity, money, things happening, people are rushing toward it. So sure, you get that peak and then the drop and all that. But at the time when you're doing it, in any of those cases, it's legit. There's real things happening. There's real people. There's real money being spent. It's not just thin air that's being created, right? Um, so I knew that I believed in Gary. I knew that I trusted the guy. I knew that he was onto something. That if somebody was going to build it, he was going to be one of those somebodies, right? Having met him, having watched his career, reading, crushing it, understanding that he had a perception of what was happening, like the Wayne Gretzky quote of "Go where the puck is going, not where the puck has been." Like that's how
Yep.
you know where to go. Like I understood that Gary had some vision, and was I going to put my money behind a guy who I thought had vision, who knew where things were going, right? So for me, that's how I made the decision to get into NFTs and to back Gary and to put my money toward minting a VeeFriend or VeeFriends.
And you, that whole time you were following him
Yeah, I mean,
on
it's like he wrote. I remember he signed a book deal somewhere along the way. I don't know what year Crushing It came out, 2012. I'm going to say 2013. And I read the book, and it's funny because I had been a TV star at Bloomberg. I was a journalist, so I was a known sort of face and journalist covering the tech space, right? So then here's a guy, Gary, saying, all of that, like the Dan Rathers and the faces on TV and the CBSs and the NBCs and the ABCs, were all going to go like this, and then just some guy with a Bob's, tire shop with a TV channel or whatever, just somebody, a person with a camera creating a space was going to go like this. And just understanding I came from that world, right? I came from the world where I wanted to be on CBS. If they were like, hey, you want to anchor CBS Evening News on weekend, I'd be like, yeah, I'll take that job. But if they said, do you want to just start the Anthony Massucci channel on, I would, no. How am I going to pay the rent? How's that going to work, right? So I came from that world that was slowly but quickly transitioning to where it is. I mean, it's all obvious now what the hell happened, right? And Gary spoke of it as it was happening, before it happened, etc. Right? We see all the videos, and I was one of those people going like, is this really going to happen? Is this really going to, right? And even when I left media and TV and went into PR, the timing was exactly right. Like that's when it was happening. That has nothing to do with why I left. I mean, my life led to the decisions that I made. But it's interesting, and Gary and I spoke about that on the first Hanging Out Hawk call. I acknowledged that I doubted what he was saying, having been from this world, and sort of, doubting the idea that that world that he was talking about would actually materialize as he said it would, right? And even knowing that it was happening, still doubting that it was going to happen, right? So there's all of that, which is, but that's where vision and leadership comes into play. Look, he could have been wrong, right? And
yeah, no. But he usually isn't.
No, exactly.
If we're really keeping score, he usually isn't.
Yes.
And like Crush It, like you referenced Crushing It. Right. Crush It, like was even earlier, and some people now still don't even think, like if you talk to people in the world, that you can make money online when, like, obviously so many people are doing it.
Wait, just real quick, there was a study just recently that people, I forget, McKinsey or research, people trust TikTok faces and faces they're seeing on YouTube now more than they trust the guys at CBS or the gals at CBS, right? Like, so the transition has been made. It's happened, right? So people in 2025, a face on TikTok or on YouTube is going to be more trusted by an audience than a face on CBS. So it's already in the rearview mirror, right? So, but yes, go ahead. I just want to point that out because I just heard that recently.
No, that's valuable, and it's just so true. In LA this past August for VCon,
right.
One of my friends, he became a journalist in the entertainment field at a very young age, like to the point where, like, people didn't know his age for a long time because he was so young.
Right.
So he's made a name for himself there, and because of my relationship with him and who he is, long story short, I ended up at a lunch with Gary.
Right.
Not a VeeFriends thing. I was just kind of brought there because my friend knows how I feel about Gary. And, we didn't like talk in depth about VeeFriends or anything, but just on other subjects. He is thinking 6 years in advance.
Right.
Like, his chess moves are so played out, like, it's unbelievable how his mind works. And that's just how he operates, and then reverse engineers it. Right. Like, he's really thinking about like a live commerce thing, and like Whatnot is just like he's just like trying it out.
Right. Yeah, the old phrase
because of the next thing, and it's
playing chess while others are playing checkers. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
he's just a different animal, which is why a huge reason why I believe in this as much as I do. And obviously, it's May 2021, and you are believing. So we know you're a big hawk, but so and a goat.
Right.
Were those the only two?
No, a rattlesnake, a rational rattlesnake. Hang on. I basically got stuff on the floor. I knew I wanted.
Let's go. Let's take us. Yeah. Let's have some fun and take us through the High Anthony mindset, because a lot of us listening weren't around then.
Right.
So, like, what was your thought process? Did you say, like, I'm only going to get one, or like, oh, he mentioned this one's going to get gifts, I'm going to get this one? I want to have time with them. Give us the play-by-play of your rationale for your minting there.
So it's funny, I didn't buy a core at all. I thought to myself, like initially, I didn't go after the coveted characters, right? Because initially everything was whatever characters were most obviously coveted went at higher prices, and also the gas fees were really high. Like people were paying hundreds or more. I don't even, it was just some.
It was
So
insane.
I waited that out. I was like, all right, bullets are flying, the fire is high, the people are overpaying for stuff. And I had some Ethereum that I had bought at relatively reasonable prices that I was thinking I would use to buy the NFTs, right? And so I thought, all right, well, I want to, and at the time Ethereum was about 4,400 per Ethereum. So I had bought Ethereum somewhere between, probably bought a couple at 700, maybe 1,100, but a bunch of them I bought under 200. So I was like, all right, well, let me use like a dozen to buy NFTs, right? But at that moment, I could have cashed them in for $4,400. So there was real value there. It's like even one
Oh yeah.
Ethereum. So like when I bought a Hawk for 3 Ethereum, that was the equivalent of, let's say, 12 or 13 grand. I knew I wanted a Hawk because I loved the idea of the 15 meetings over 3 years. To me, that was it was appealing. I also understood that a digital meeting in the modern day world was almost as good as an in-person meeting, right? And then also the magic of meeting people in a crowd online seemed very reasonable to me. So I liked that idea. And there were 125, right? And it's funny because the goats came, there were 555 goats. So as main characters were kind of gobbled up and gone, there were still goats left. Maybe there were 75, 85, and then it was 65. And then, so somewhere between like 85 and 40 goats is where I was like, I got to jump in because if I don't, I'm going to be kicking myself. So by then the floor had been hit. The floor on the goats, the floor on the Hawk, like I got them exactly at the floor. So the gas fees had calmed down. Maybe it was day 2, day 3, whatever it was. So the gas fees had been solved. But with that, a lot of the big characters were off the table, right? So I just have to look now. I'm looking at my MetaMask to see. And it was fun to watch all that happen. I remember there was a guy on YouTube doing videos about justifying why NFTs were going to be valuable, specifically VeeFriends NFTs. And I honestly don't remember exactly what he said, but the argument seemed plausible, potentially valid, enough for me to jump. And remember, I came from a world of tech, right? Like, so this is 2021. 20 years before, in 2099, 2000, I had covered early tech. Many of those companies went bankrupt. Many of those companies went bye-bye. Some of them succeeded. Some of them flourished, right? So to me, it's a game of leadership. You really, if you're going to bet on a company, you're betting on the lead person, in my mind. Having interviewed CEOs, having met a lot of these people. I remember in like, I don't know, let's say 2000, I met a woman running a company. She was the CEO. She was like 28, maybe 30, let's say 28. She had been a journalist at the Miami Herald. The team of this company met her. She interviewed them as a journalist like me. And then they liked her so much, they made her CEO. It was like something ridiculous. Like we laughed about the story. So I'm a journalist interviewing her, the CEO of whatever this company was. We're roughly the same age. We laughed about this like golden opportunity falling in her lap, and she gets to run this small tech company at the time. And so having lived through that 20 years before, I had some feeling of what was going on, roughly like there's going to be a lot of companies are going to fall and some companies will survive the carnage. And I was betting on Gary to survive that carnage. So for me, picking the NFTs wasn't as important as utilizing my resources toward NFTs that I thought were going to be part of a team that would exist X number of years later. And of course, I wanted them to go up. And of course, I thought they were going up. Like I didn't bet my money thinking, oh, these are going to go down. Or of course, I thought they were going up, right? I mean, so like, why would you invest in anything, even now? So
and they did.
But a lot of it really for me, and just having met so many CEOs over my journalism career, whether it was interviewing them on TV or radio, or just doing like what we're doing and then writing a story, my judgment was you're betting on the person as much as you're betting on the company, if not more person. Like we're talking about Gary being a visionary, that guy.
Betting on the jockey.
Right, 100%. And I had an uncle who used to say bet on the jockey, right? Like he was the guy who bet on jockeys. So yes. But you really you get a sense of if you've interviewed enough people who lead companies, you get a sense of who's full of it and who's not, who's got that moxie, who's gonna prove what they're saying to be real, who's gonna illustrate a great vision. We could all illustrate great, not all of us, but many people are good at illustrating a great vision. You're always selling yourself, whether you're proposing to Chelsea or you're trying to get a job or you're getting future clients. You're selling your vision, and is the person buying it, and then they're betting on you, right? So that's the whole game. And so I was bidding on Gary in that sense. Who knew? I mean, I heard of NFTs. There were NFTs around 3-4 years before all this, and none of them to me seemed accessible because I didn't know who was in charge. But I knew Gary, and I knew he was in charge. So to me, that felt like a very easy wager to make. So that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And it's something he said over and over again during this era where people were bouncing around. Like you said before, everyone was starting an NFT project. Like every time you can open your phone without something being the latest, hottest project.
Right.
It wasn't weekly. It was daily.
Oh yeah. It was
And
that.
there was FOMO up the yin yang because projects the floor would go up,
right.
And then it would go down or it would keep on going up, and it was bananas. And something he always said from the get was 99% of these are going to fail.
And there were some projects then that Gary was hot on, like
Oh sure.
Real quick,
he had that little show. Sarah Bauman, perfect example. She's been on the show. Great girl. So wonderful artist.
Right.
She one day, Gary bought a piece of her art and tweeted it out, and her life was changed.
Right.
And it's still different because of that moment. And then she did a second project. He had her on a little show, and that went bananas.
Right.
So he was putting people on and just moving markets. But there was a lot of people like that in the space. Maybe not as polarizing as him, but in the Web3 space. So it was a wild time. But the punchline is like when the dust settles, you got to bet on the jockey.
And I'm a big even now I'm a big believer in that. If I'm gonna buy
look who's left. Look who's left.
What's that? Look who's left.
Right. Look who's left. I mean, you have Gary. You have the pudgies like Luca. If you really dig in, but so.
Well, just to answer your original question, because I'm looking them up. Rational Rattlesnake, I got an epic, so that was probably 1.5 at the floor. I just love the snake. Rational makes sense to me. Rational, right? Gracious Goose, which probably wasn't anywhere near my top pick, but I love the Gracious Goose. I thought it was a great, and it was I also got a rare, so that was probably no. The rare would be 1.5 ETH. The epic probably was 2 ETH, and then the Accountable Anteater, because the Accountable Ant was gone. My name is Anthony the Ant, whatever. I just liked it. Right. So,
okay.
So I went with the Anteater instead because the Ant was gone, and that was also a rare, so probably 1.5 ETH. And then the Hangout Hawk, and then the Goat. So then the Goat was the last one I got, and the Goats had floored at 3. And I love the idea of like getting a gift every month kind of thing. Like GQ magazine had for $75 a month, they would curate 3 or 4 things to send them in the mail. So I like that idea of a gift of the month kind of thing. And what better way, even if you don't have a lot of money, what a great way to spoil yourself to do something fun like that, right? So maybe you get like cool sunglasses, or you get some jacket or whatever. Right. So I thought I'm really going to kick myself if I don't do this gift code thing, because I'm so curious. As like 6 gifts a year, plus they all came with an NFT in the early days, right? So you're going to meet a new artist and you hear the artist be interviewed, and that was very much appealing to me. And I like hearing new artists and all that stuff. Even last night when there was like one of the artists was there on Gary's show, like they're coming on after. I mean, it's just that whole, Gary's very much plugged into the music community, the art community, and I like that. Either having access or just meeting people and hearing their stories. So that's also so that those things. So I almost didn't get the goat, but then I guess the FOMO as they were dwindling down from somewhere between 80 and 40, I was like, I jumped in because I knew if there were none left, I was going to be mad that I didn't get it. Mad at myself for not jumping.
Now we've gone through the cycle. Do you have a favorite gift?
The chair, it's great.
Chair's nice.
I mean, just because for practical, rational, right? I was saying for practical reasons, like I sit in it all the time, right? It's a great chair, and it's very comfortable, and it just works. And I like the cool gift code logo on the back of the chair. I mean, I'm not looking at the back of the chair very often if I'm not in the chair, and I actually love the June oven. I use it all the time. So I'm a single dad, so I have my kids half the time, so I'm cooking, every other night, half the time. So I could cook in the June oven while using a different oven on the stove. So it's kind of you can cook 2 or 3 things all at the same time, right? So those I would say they're favorites because I use them a lot. Right? They're just good. It's like they're gifts. I'm getting almost daily use out. So
Has anyone in the goat world, goat chat, have they ever like added up like the retail price of all of the
nobody
gifts?
has, but it's certainly higher than the value that we pay. If you mint, I mean, some people paid more, right?
Right.
And some people have certainly paid less. So, like if you got one 3 years ago, you're paying at the bottom. So, yeah, I mean, there were some gifts that were certainly not great value and all that jazz. Like the dog was always getting picked on, and there was a glass milk jar and whatever. I mean, but even that to me, like the not knowing what the gift was going to be was part of the fun.
Sure. What
do
you think that, and obviously this, I mean, I'm not asking you personally, but just the overall sentiment. Do you think I know the Beat Bowl jar was a big disappointment. Do you think that was, like off the top of your head, the biggest, I don't want, letdown might be too strong of a word, or disappointment, but maybe
it was a peak. I would call it a peak.
a peak.
Like at the end of peak, as in PEAK, obviously we all know, but I'm just saying, like at the end of VCOM 1, when Gary was saying, hang on to your tickets, announcement, Snoop, all that stuff. So that would be like the peak of the ticket value, right? Because people were anticipating what was going to come, and then that any anticipation creates demand, and then it creates high. And so that was sort of the same scenario again with the goats to people involvement. Like, so that again, the anticipation leading up. I mean, having been somebody who's watched tech stocks and investments, like the best time of any sort of product or idea is the demand created in anticipation of what's to come. Because inevitably, no matter what, it's so hard to meet inflated expectations, no matter how real or imagined they'll be. And so people will get all wound up about it's going to be great. It's going to be great. What's it going to be? What's going to be like Beeple or Snoop, whatever Snoop was announced what was going to be. And so crescendo into that moment, right? That's where the mania is the highest. And inevitably, people are going to be let down unless you exceed expectations, which happens occasionally. But inevitably, people's expectations are going to be so high that it's hard to ring the bell loud enough to keep everybody thrilled, right? So that's sort of the game. And you see it over and over.
You're bringing me back to the Snoop thing.
Okay.
That was wild at the end of that keynote.
Right.
Man, the VCon 1 ticket. By the time we got out of the arena,
right,
the price of the ticket just 3x.
Yeah. Do you remember where it topped? Have any idea?
No, but I want to look it up now.
I would say I bought a Gary originally owned VCon 1 ticket, and I had some tickets already because I had the NFT ones, right? You had a ticket with each NFT one you had. NFT Series 1. So I already had 5 tickets because I had 5 NFTs. So I think I paid an ETH for a Gary originally owned Series 1 ticket after the fact. So somewhere in that,
towards the
somewhere in that moment,
point.
in that mania moment, I was
Got it.
Maybe it was like I bought. like not at the top, but somewhere just off the top
Mm.
of the
The well, still a strong believer in the VCon 1 ticket.
Me
I
too.
think that's a cool
I have
collectible. I think that is definitely, if you're someone that's thinking about like investing that kind of money
yes.
into like maybe a book game or two or something on that smaller end, we'll call it. I think a VCon 1 ticket is is a play if you're going to be here for the long run.
I just real quick, ironically, I had sold 3 of my 5 tickets heading into VCOM 1 because the prices had gone up and then they were coming down and so it's one of the few some of the few NFTs I actually have sold over the years would be VCOM 1 tickets previous to VCOM 1 when the prices were up and down and so it's interesting and then I ran and bought one afterward, right? So like interesting. But yeah, I think for sure one of the long term plays is a good one is the VCOM 1 ticket, but who knows, right? I mean, would you rather have an accountable ant or would you rather have a VCOM 1? It's like,
Mm.
it's all fun to speculate.
The goats and hawks, two, we'll call them man-made small sub communities here,
Right.
um, in VeeFriends. I mean, we talked about the networking effect of the Hawks. You kind of alluded to that before. You guys have had meetups. You've had cool experiences. Meeting at the office for Gary's birthday,
I've
and
had hawk parties right here
um,
in this park. So, which is great, right? Not that many of those things about. So, yeah.
yeah. So, have you cashed in on that? Like, have you built relationships, business relationships, networking with that? Like now looking back, we're 4 years in now.
Yes.
Looking back, can you look back and say like that was
Yes.
I've had some
I
good
mean,
relationships.
cashed in tangibly, yes. Cashed in.
Well, cashed in
No, but
metaphorically, I
I'm
guess,
thinking it
in
through
this
as you're
part.
saying it. I'm like, yeah, I mean, the relationships, the some partnerships, I mean, even Benny, who bought my book last night on the stream, was one of those people like, in the break. So, um, and he's a friend, and he's someone I've hung out with. We've had beers, and we've talked business. He comes to town, we hang out, right? Just so yes, for sure. Like none of there's easily a dozen people who I would call good friends from my hawk world that I didn't know before to make it 2021, like at all, right? So yes, tangibly and intangibly, it's measurable.
And I want to get to the book, but before that, you somewhere in your journey entered the collectibles world
Yes,
and managed to make it onto to the moon streams, whatnot streams, um, and bought yourself a box one night,
yes,
correct?
yeah.
And hit one of
The
uh,
first, so the first Series 2 box I bought was just after Soggy had bought his Series 1 box and
okay.
had the big black cat hit. And it was in one of the early to the moon. Chelsea was on, Rob's wife was on the stream as Soggy hit that famed black cat bubblegum Series 1 card. And it was quite the moment. I was captivated. I was into it. I was thrilled for Soggy. I to some degree was learning as it was happening, watching it all in front of me, right? And the cards were a whole different dynamic than the NFTs. Very tangible. I mean, I've collected cards my whole life, football, baseball, all that stuff. When I was a kid, I would go to the swap shop in Fort Lauderdale and have a table up and sell comics and cards like on a Saturday
Did
morning.
you really?
When I was a kid, yeah, yeah. And I would take like me and
The swap shop is my childhood.
yes.
My grandparents lived there, and I went there 3 times a year.
Oh my
The
God, me and
circus.
my buddy Rich, we would fill our car with our parents' junk from our garage, drive out to the swap shop, and Commercial Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale was like a huge swap shop, and you could buy a spot for $15, set up a table. You could just throw it on the floor if you wanted to. You could get like twice your car would be half the space, and then the other half the space would be, and you could and so whatever we had from our parents' garages would people would vulture that 7:15 in the morning, like they you get a set of knives for $20, they'd buy it and take it to their site and sell it, their spot and sell it for $80, right? So they knew what they could pick off of your One time I sold a Hulk 180, which was the issue before Wolverine premiered in the Hulk 181, and I accidentally included it in like a dollar box or a quarter box. And a guy found it. It was a little bit of a beat up issue. Probably I would give it like a 5 on a CGC scale. But because it was in the stack and it was there, and I actually made good on the deal because like I screwed up, but the guy wanted it and it was in the dollar box, and I like knew that I was giving up a big comic, but I did it anyway just because I was keeping my word. Like this
Mm,
all happened at the swap shop, right in Fort Lauderdale. So those
that's
were
so
fun
funny.
days. Those, yeah,
Yeah, it's funny because with the whole T-shirt thing, now I'm doing more research and I'm like seeing T-shirts that I remember seeing at the swap shop
right.
in those days. Like
Yes.
that's how old.
We'd walk away with like
Um,
$400 at the end of the day. You know, like it was the money was real and it was fun. It was crazy. And I even worked at there was a guy named Phil in Margate, Florida when I was a teenager. He was like a tech guy for a tech company back then. And he only was open at nights and weekends for his comic and card shop. And as a teenager, I worked at his store sorting cards and pricing comics. And then 20 years later, I went back to the store with my kids and sold him whatever I had left at my mom's house, just stuff, and he was an older guy and it was kind of cool to see him. He had a son roughly my age. He was running the store. It was like, yeah. So collectibles, I mean, specifically cards and comics was something I was very familiar with as a kid. Movie cards, sports cards, all stickers, wacky pack stickers, garbage pail stickers, all that stuff. It was very much like, for whatever reason, I totally don't. I mean, still do. Here we are with VeeFriends.
right. And thinking back to that, I just hearing you talk, you back in those days, you had to be so much more talented and just know your niche, know
Right,
your industry because there's no eBay app
right.
to look up comps.
Oh,
Like
that,
for cards, I know we had Beckett. For I don't know, was there a Beckett for comics?
yeah, Wizard, I think it was called Wizard
Got it.
something.
So like you had that to a degree, but
Yeah.
that's not
It
like
was,
when you're,
and then
if
electronic
you're at something
games,
like
like,
a garage sale or a swap shop, you,
yeah.
you just got to keep
I mean,
moving.
those were fun days. And you really would have like an encyclopedia of information in your head. Like you would know if Star Wars issue number 3 with the alternate cover was valuable, and then the one with the non-hobby shop cover was very common. You could buy it at 7-Eleven, so the value was like marginal compared to the one that you had to get in a sealed bag or whatever, like all that stuff. If you remember, there was a certain Spider-Man issue. They recast Spider-Man, and it was like 6 covers, alternate covers, and you could only get one cover at a comic book store. A different cover you had to go to 7-Eleven to get. It's the same game, just different, the refractors and all the stuff that we're talking about the VeeFriends cards. Right? It's just a different formula of the same equation or the same game. So just yeah, so the knowledge in your head was of huge value because there was no way. So
Mm,
that's why that kid could grab that comic from me, knowing that it was worth a hell of a lot more than a buck, right? Because he and I screwed up by including it in that buck box. So yeah, those were fun times. You could even, I mean, that's all the stuff that Gary does with the garage sailing and the
yeah.
videos. Yeah, 100%.
So I wanna talk about your book, unbelievable accomplishment. I want to get into it, but
Take your time, whatever
to
you want to
bridge
tell. I'm here. Yeah.
I heard a very interesting story. I'd love you to tell us what Gary V has to do with your book, Grade School, a memoir.
Yeah. So having met Gary in 2009, I would say like we were acquaintances. I was following what he was doing. I buy the NFTs. I go to VCon 2, and there was a goat event. I guess it was before VCon 2. So the goats were down in value. The gift goat NFT was down in value. So Gary, to give back to the community of goats, created a special event with Shaq in Atlanta at a stadium to just like as a gesture to give some value to you want to autographs, whatever it was. There's just the value of networking within the other goats like the Hawks are doing. So I see him there. We vibe a little bit on the stadium floor. We're talking about investing, and he's got a crowd around him. And I also had some gray in my hair, so we're talking about investing. And I was a tech journalist and investing guy, so it was all it all works. So then I see him at VCon 2, and he has a 7 a.m. goat only thing where you can bring whatever you want, and he'll order it. Like a sock or a can, whatever, whatever VeeFriend thing you had. And then a bunch of the artists, like last night, there was an artist who I had met at V. So the artists were there in the same room, NFT artists that had, part of the deal was getting these NFTs. So I don't know, it was like 7:30 in the morning. There was a line of people, and Gary and I was maybe like 20th online or whatever. And I go, it's my turn. We're BSing a little bit. He takes my phone. He does a quick video for the kids. Calls me Pops, says a video, send it to the kids, so then he goes, you live in New York, right? I'm like, yeah. He goes, why don't you come by the office sometime? Bring the kids. Which was a surprise that he threw that out there. I was like, okay, great. Yes. So that's May of 23.
3.
And so the meeting doesn't happen for August, July, June, July, August, whatever, 3 months, 4 months later. It's a 10-minute meeting. So I email my person, whatever he said. So I email them right away, and I get okay. So I'm on the calendar for 3 months later, at 4:30 in the afternoon, and I'm supposed to bring my kids. And I live in the city, so it's not a big deal to get there, right? I know where the office is. I had never been, but I figured it out. So neither of my kids wanted to go because, the whole NFT thing and the guy, that's all my thing, and it's not their thing and their kids, how the world. So, but then before the meeting happened, I was able to talk my son into going because he's a teenager and he's in high school. And I'm like, this is a cool company with a bunch of cool young guys and gals, and they're doing their thing. And I said, even if you just go there and because he's not as verbose as me. And so I'm like, even if you just go there and just see the vibe, like that would be fun. And so I was able to talk him into go. My daughter, no. So, when you're teenagers, like whatever dad's doing isn't cool, and what you're doing is cool. And I was a teenager. I totally get it. Yes, 100%. And so, but Logan comes and I go, and so it was great showing up, and it was fun to see the office. And so we go to the front desk. So we go through security, go to the front desk, and there's nobody there. There's like nobody there. Empty. Well, so it turns out they're having an off-site meeting that day, like a what do they call those? Like an all hands thing somewhere else. So we're standing there. It's 2 minutes till our meeting time with Gary, and we don't even know where Gary is. We don't know where his office is. We don't know anything, and there's no one to ask. So some guy walks by with a laptop. Somehow we make the connection. He walks us into Gary's office, and so there's no Dustin. There's no team of people. It's just Gary sitting at a laptop at his desk. Me and Logan sit down across from him. At the moment,
in an empty office.
What's that?
In an empty office.
Empty office, and you could have shot a flare gun. It was like there was nobody there, but it's New York City, so it's not, there's no dust bunnies running by. So, and it's a great view from his office, like really cool view from the window. So we're sitting there, and actually Gary's like engaged in an email, like he's focused on the laptop. And so we sit there, and we don't even initially say hi because he's deep in something, right? And I have clients like Gary, so I understand he's in the middle of something. I'm respectful, so we're just, whatever it is, 10 seconds, 30 seconds go by. He looks up, and he's kind of still in the world of where his head was at. So we start talking, but it's maybe a little slow. And then, Gary, he's like Mr. Energy. And I'm certainly not short of energy. So we pretty quickly, there's electricity, right? We're just talking. So we're talking about, I talk about my ex-wife, and we have a great relationship. He talks a little bit about his ex and his kids, and Logan's sitting there, and his son was off at camp. And so we're just vibing about sports and wives and life. And I mean, maybe 10 minutes goes by. So it's a 10-minute meeting, and the whole 10 minutes are gone because we're just talking about life, in essence. So, and somewhere along the way, day trading attention came up, and I offered to edit his book because I've edited some books for clients. And I thought, and they can be boring sometimes, not all of them. So I thought, well, editing Gary's book would be so much fun. So I offered to edit the book, and he wasn't sure. So I'll let you know, it was, whatever. And so then roughly 10 minutes into the 10-minute meeting, he looks at me and goes, what can I do for you? Which was an unexpected question. I know that I should have expected it, but I didn't. I didn't even know why I was there, honestly. I didn't even care. I was just like happy to be. I was like, he invited me, bring your kids. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah, of
Yeah.
course you say yes.
Yeah, you're not gonna say no.
And
Yeah.
like, but I'm not thinking agenda, and I'm not thinking he has an agenda either. Like, literally, and certainly in the world of business, we all have a reason to be where we go. I'm a business guy, I get it, but just none of that occurred to me in an essence. And like, I was just there to hang with Gary. So in that moment, my mind immediately, because we're talking about his book, I'm like, well, I have a book idea, and here's it, and I just tell him, grade school, and I had these great teachers, and life was rough, and they came through for me in like an amazing way, and I want to write a book about them, and I'm working on it. I had sent myself an email in like 2012 about this book, and a good procrastinator, a good journalist is, if nothing else, an excellent procrastinator. So, and I was both of those things I could do well. I was a great writer, great journalist, great procrastinator. So, and so as I'm sharing the story with Gary, and I'm telling him exactly what you see in this book, right? Like he lights up. So I'm passionate. I'm telling him the whole story. He's passionate, like, holy cow, this is a great idea. And like, so his energy and my energy were just like combustible, right? So he's really enthused. And I'm enthused that he's enthused, and I'm sharing and so as we're doing it, he goes, well, why haven't you written this book? Which was a great question. And I said to him very earnestly, I'm like, Gary, I'm not a former rock star. I'm not a former athlete. I'm not like a known person. Yes, I was a decently well-known tech journalist, but in the world of Bloomberg, like I wasn't in any way, shape, or form a household name, right? Ever. So, so that was my point. And he actually said, great point. Like he thought that was a good answer. He said, well, tell you what, he's like, I love this idea. You got to write this book. What the hell are you waiting for? Write the damn book. I think he said, write the fucking book, but write the damn book. And I said, and he's like, if you tell you what, and this is like all like in his head, like he's just coming out of him. If you write the book, I'll have you on the podcast. And so in essence, to motivate me, and also to, all right, sure, maybe people don't know who you are, but I'll have you on my podcast, and that'll sell you some books, right? And I was like, great. Like, yes. Where do I need to sign something? So I was, and so we both were like kind of high on the energy of the moment. The discussion, like, it just flamed, right? It just hit. He loved it. And he's like, I hear ideas all the time. I got lots of ideas. People are telling me, he's like, this is really good. I like it. He was like even giving me ideas on the idea. And then, so now I'm like happy as a clam, just being like, this is great.
Yeah, stoked.
And yeah, so stoked. And then somehow, so this 10-minute meeting turns into a 20-minute meeting, and somebody comes by the glass thing to wave him to the next meeting. He waves them off, and all this happens. And somehow in that same meeting, because he's really vibing with Logan, and his own son is at camp, and I think he misses Xander. And so he says to Logan, what are you doing next summer? And Logan's like, and he's like, do you want to intern here? And Logan's like, okay. And so those two things came up like in the last 10 minutes of the extended time, whatever. And so those two things both sort of materialized just based on like a great time and good energy and three people having a good meeting at an empty office. Right. So, but that is beautifully like life in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Like
of course.
if nothing else, like this is why we live. This is why we get out of bed in the morning. I mean, there's lots of great moments in life, but this was definitely one of them. So
that's a fantastic story. And spoiler alert, you write the book.
right. There it is.
So that's good context for someone that's thinking like, all right, how long does it take from start to finish?
Yeah, that was
to complete a project?
2023. I mean, I had some guts of the book written, but I had reasons to stall. I didn't want to offend my family. I wanted to write the story in a way that championed these teachers, but didn't overly champion them at the expense of my mom and my siblings. Like, it was a delicate balance, all of this, right? Because what I didn't understand at the time, like at that very moment with Gary, and the reason I was stalling was for these things in my head. But it's all the reasons where people go to Gary. We see the videos where like, Gary, I want to blah blah blah, and Gary's like, why aren't you? And they say what they're saying, and Gary says, whatever. Like, that was the guy from Brazil on the recent Tea with Gary V, and Gary's like, start the coffee shop, and the guy's like, I want to buy the house. My mom thinks I should buy a house. Did you see that? It was a recent episode.
No, I
Anyway,
missed that
so
one.
Gary was kind of disappointed because he wasn't able to get the guy to do the coffee shop, and the guy who wanted to buy the house with his mom. And it was just like, and Gary was kind of bummed that the guy didn't like run with the idea, the $1 million idea. And the reason all that happens is, and I could see it in myself and I could see it in many times, is the things in our head are getting in the way, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, with
Always.
this book, whatever I had built up in my head, which were legitimate, good, if you had met me then, I could tell you why I couldn't write it, shouldn't write it, whatever. But what I didn't understand, and what Gary helped me get past, and what he helps so many people get past, is those doubts or whatever it is, the stories you tell, right? So then as I wrote the book, I overcame all of those problems by elegantly coming up with solutions on the fly as I was doing. So I wasn't thinking about what I was going to do in the moment of truth. If you're going to dive off a diving board and it's 6 feet or 12 feet up and the pool's down here and the pool's really deep, and whatever reasons people don't want to dive off, there's lots of good reasons not to do it, right? But all you could go over it in your head 27 times and you think about all the things that are going to happen and all or play it out. But when you get to the edge of that diving board, you don't really know what you're going to do until you get there.
Yeah.
You really don't. And you might like the dive, you win, you get a 10 from the Russian judge, everybody's happy, you nail it, right? But understanding there's some magic of putting yourself on the edge of the board and then not knowing what you're going to do. And we all owe ourselves those moments. Even if you fuck up, even if you fail, even if you flop off that board and make it a belly flop into the pool, you still owe yourself that moment, right? And so Gary helped me get to that point where I could potentially belly flop or dive well. And then I had to trust myself to just make it work. So I was able to write the book in a way that solved all the problems in my head that I thought were issues of why I shouldn't write it or couldn't write it, or yada, yada, yada. And I'm really proud of it. I think it's a great book. I think I did a great job writing it. I think I did it in a way. So because it's a memoir about my grade school years, right? Again, I'm not a known guy who wants to read about my life. I get it. So as a journalist, and I have a team. They're called Book Accelerator. Ashley Mansauer in LA, this group that I'm working with. She outlined like, the act 1, act 2, act 3, build up the tension, yada yada, all that stuff. And so, although I've written many stories as a journalist, I've never written a book. So I was able to, with some guidance, coaching, whatnot, get this to the point where I'm like, oh, this works. Any movie or TV show you watch, right? You're like, why do you tune in after the commercial? Why do you tune in next week? Why do you tune into the next season? They create some tension. There's some stakes. You want to know what's going to happen next. So I was able to do all of that here. So I wrote the book as it happened, real life, what's really happening. None of it's made up. It's all true. But I did it in a way that it's like a novel. So you're reading a memoir that's written like a novel. So it almost doesn't matter that it's a memoir if you dig novels, if you dig a good story. So
I
I
love
just
that.
said a
Here,
lot, but I think.
no, I love it. Your passion. It's your passion.
Thank you.
Here's the synopsis from Amazon. In grade school, Anthony Massucci shares a deeply personal and inspiring memoir about the transformative power of unexpected support. His childhood, marked by struggles at home, was illuminated by the unwavering kindness and encouragement of his grade school teachers. Their influence shaped his attitude, spirit, and future, and serves as a beacon of hope for anyone facing challenges. At a time when many might retreat inward, Anthony chose to lean into the support system that formed around him. Beyond his mother, siblings, and extended family, his teachers became unexpected caregivers who propelled him forward.
Now, hearing you read that to me, because I've read it, I've obviously read it, but it's like I got a little chill and I could feel the emotion. Like even having read the book, I know what happens. I lived it. It just sounds so good. So yeah, like sign me up.
It does sound good, and as
I want to read it again.
as an educator, grade school educator for
Yes.
10 years, as a
Yes.
parent, as a child where I had rough teachers, but I had some great ones too. Like I'm very looking forward to reading this book. Getting the real edition. I'm not a real Kindle guy, but
I'm with you, buddy.
maybe you'll sign it.
Of course, I'll sign it. I'd be happy to. But you know what? I think I'm gonna do a podcast, and I would love to have you on, and I would love to hear the negatives, the why leave, why, well, all of that stuff. Right? I think that's completely legit and part of the story, like the extension of what teachers are and the life. because they're certainly not handsomely rewarded. They're certainly not revered in our culture. They're certainly not put on. I mean, to some degree, they're put on a pedestal, but mostly not. Right. So all of those things are still true. And while there are many amazing teachers, I'm sure there are some bad ones. Right. All those things. There's a lot of context here, but for me, the bigger story is maybe your kid's math teacher isn't the greatest math teacher, but what if they're your kid's confidant? What if there's somebody who's emotionally super supportive, or somebody they trust and someone they can talk to, right? And there's real value there, and it's a little bit amorphous, like what does that really mean? But it's all legit. I mean, it's just real, and I lived it, right? So not every one of my teachers was amazing. Luckily for me, my grade school teachers were rock stars. And but I get there's two sides to it for sure, but I'm still a champion of teachers are amazing and undervalued. I love it.
Yeah, and I am sure, I'm to the point now where I get Instagram messages, I get Facebook messages from parents of kids that I had, and so I get the notes, and it feels great. Like no matter how long removed you
That's
are,
awesome.
like to know that the ripples still affect you is fantastic, and that's why, like, if you listen to this podcast, one of the questions I've had in Micro Macro Spitfire from early on was what's one teacher you had,
Yes, yes, I love that.
what your favorite teacher, and one reason why. Because everybody has that teacher,
Yes.
and I'm happy you're able to come up with multiple in this. So I have two questions. One, are any of the people still with us that know that they've been honored in this way? And two, do you think that this would be inspirational for current teachers to read
Yeah,
and
I'll
inspire
take
them?
your second question first. 1,000%. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, if any teacher is going to pick it up, is going to read it, is going to either feel affirmed of what they are doing that is right for the kid, potentially inspired to do some more things that they're not thinking of or could maybe do. And also like understand that, there are not every teacher is going to be as amazing as the ones in the book. They don't have to be, right? We're not looking for, not everybody has to be, the creme de la creme, just, be a kick-ass. My daughter literally just yesterday, she's now a freshman in high school, and she had a teacher in middle school who was also an assistant softball coach who's become a friend, right? So she went out of her way yesterday to get a card and a plant and bring it to her. So my daughter brought this to, and I had nothing to do with it. She told me she was going to do it. No, she went and did it, right? So, and she knows my book, but hasn't, it's just like, it's just life. I mean, so here's somebody, she has her text, they text, they're friends, there's someone, this is someone that my daughter trusts and can count on. And I've met her, I know her well, I've been to different dances at the school, and I thanked her for stepping up for my daughter, etc. So, we've had some sweet moments where I could say, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing, what you've done. And, my ex-wife is an amazing mom. I think I'm a great dad, but there's plenty of room for other people to help. It takes a village, right, to raise kids, family, friends, next door neighbor, whatever. So there's that. But to answer your first question, I haven't found the teachers. I went to my grade school a few times. I actually documented some of it on my Instagram. North Lauderdale Elementary, great school. It was really fun going back. They're like, oh my, the school opened in the 70s. There were portables and the building opened. And so I'm there now as an adult. And I'm like, there's like an emblem of when the school opened. I'm like, I was here when that happened. And people are like, oh my God, right? So I got to meet the principal and I got to meet the administrators. But for privacy reasons, 2025, they're not plugging you in with people. They kind of sent me off to the education board. They weren't helpful.
Right.
So I'm hoping, I have my email at the end of the book for anyone in the family or the teachers themselves who read it, that they should email me and I'd be happy to hear from them. It's funny because my fourth grade teacher was at the time a 23-year-old, first job at a college. So yes,
We got to have some PIs in the VeeFam that could track these people down.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and the cool part is that these 5 grade school teachers, they were different ages. One was a guy, 4 were women, older women, young women, like in a variety of people. And they were all just super sweet and supportive and loving. And I guess they could tell I needed a little extra TLC, etc. And they provided it in such a great way. And I think it really helped propel me through those years. and it gave me a very happy place to be at school. And I became a good student. Like I wanted to get good grades and make my mom happy and be a good. All of it just felt really. So it was such a good. I mean, think about like a elementary school in South Florida in the '70s. It probably seems like it's not Harvard, right?
Right.
But for me, no better place could have been out there. So
Super. What an honor. What a great way to honor those people by taking on this colossal project
thanks.
and doing that. And so I really look forward to reading it. I'm sure I'm gonna buy some and send it to some
Oh, I
teachers
love that.
that
Yes.
um that are in my world for my come up. But no, it's an important message. The thing, my North Star as a teacher
Right.
was something that I heard the first day I walked into grad school.
Okay.
Um,
Where'd you go to grad school?
because I was a late bloomer. I told you I went to the PR
Right.
thing. Kind of didn't know what I wanted to do for a while until I started substitute teaching, and I was like, all right, I'm good at this. I could do this.
Right.
So then I went back to grad school. On the first day, the professor put up a picture of a bunch of kids like hanging up their coats, and they all had their backpacks on. And the metaphor was like every kid comes to school with a backpack, and you have no idea what they're carrying in it. Like everyone comes with their different set of circumstances. And I've been to a lot of different schools where, in different areas where that is so true. Like you don't know who's eating, you don't know whose daddy just got sent to jail, you don't know
Who
whose
didn't have breakfast
mama
that day?
is
Right.
popping pills and
Right.
drinking in front of it. Like it's runs the gamut.
Right.
Um, and that comma like the kid that you wanna shake the most, just and annoys you the most, needs you the most. So that was it, and that's just kind of the hardest days. I just kept that front and center,
Right.
and that
That's
I
great that
was
you had
able
that
to
perspective because a lot of people probably don't. It's good that you were able to bring.
right.
It's of huge
And
value. And
it's tough when you're in the trenches there. It
I would
really is.
imagine.
But
Yeah. 100%. Yes. Yeah.
I wonder how they're doing. I had to leave.
Yeah. No, listen.
um, but I had a good run. I had a good run. And I will definitely pay it forward, even more so, just one day. Um, so cool. Quick, it's not often that we have authors number one on Amazon. I forget what list, but we're just gonna call it number one on
Yes.
Amazon.
Educator
Um,
biographies. But thank you. But just I want to give a quick shout out to the VFam, like everybody out there, the Hawks, the Goats, the Crumbridge, the folks on X, on Twitter. Um, like the support has been fast and furious and like uh, choked up saying I'm just so
I love that. I love it, and you're a great. It says a lot about you. Like anyone could write a book, but we're supporting you, and that's just what we do.
and last night
Um,
people showed up. It's just amazing. I mean, sitting next to Gary last night and just telling him, being able to say to him, hey, thank you for everything you're doing, for creating this community, and he's, a guy behind it. And it's just so cool to be part of it, but also to see it manifest. The NFTs go up in value, they go down, all that stuff, like all the things we fixate on. But it's just like these teachers. It's just like there's an energy to the love and support. And proud. You think about like early days of Josh and Tom and Jay breaking cards and even Chelsea and Soggy and all that. Like, and it's all just steps to this, to where we are, right? And even those steps were important and valuable and loving and supportive. Like I remember watching a Series 2 box with Chelsea and Soggy. And Soggy said it was Chelsea, Tom, Jay, and like a patio in Florida in like a November. And they were there for the CGC, and Soggy was bringing his cat, right? Cat card to CGC, in case anyone was watching doesn't know what the hell we're talking about. And I'm like opening a box, and so I'm like I remember like my son was home, and I was like kind of quietly doing this, like after work, and then they opened a 52 set, 52 cards in 13 packs and four, all that stuff, and they're rolling three, non-core cards, and I said, is that it? Just three non-core cards? And Chelsea said, that I was demanding. Was I single or married because I was demanding? And then
Yeah.
Tom and Jay were like, Chels, what are you saying? Like, it was just like, and I wasn't insulted. I understood exactly what she meant. I completely understood. Having been married, I got exactly what she meant. So it wasn't offended at all, but it was just funny. And I was thinking, God, it's so funny looking back at that. Like, yeah, I signed up for it anyway, right? I was still like, I was hooked. I was in. Like, even though
Yeah.
there were only 3 non-court cards, like I was like, but there's something even about like the intimacy of online, that stream, Chels, Tom, Jay sitting in a patio in Florida, and me, and they're opening up these foil packs of cards, and it just felt tangible and it felt real, and it felt like, and I was in it. It was like, oh, this is fun. And if nothing else, like those feelings and all of that we're sharing now, I hope that when people read the book, they're getting that emotion, right? And even like some of the stuff in the book about kindness and community, and it's just really cool to see how it all like intertwines. So I'm very much proud to be part of the community and very much complimented that this is all happening, right? But it's not lost on me that it's just people like me and you sitting here doing this right now, and people supporting on Twitter, and people like me, hanging out with those 3 cats on my computer opening parts. Like, it's just, it's fun. I mean, I remember when me and my brother and sister were kids, there was like a radio station. You would call into the radio station, and you have to get a bingo card at like Dunkin' Donuts, and you had bingo cards, and they would just call B12 and I-19, and like it was the same kind of connection. Like, you're hearing a radio host in Miami talking about bingo cards, and we're like teenagers and kids, and we won. And you call the number, and I won at $13 and whatever, free donut, whatever it was. It's like it's
Oh,
the
that's
same
cool.
game on just a much bigger scale, right? Because it's just more. So there's something about this that's very intimate that you couldn't believe that it could be possible in 1983. Like, it would seem implausible that you would have to think about like diving into your television at that time to understand what's happening, right? Which seemed like it was a Tron or something.
Yes, that, and for someone that doesn't really experience it, it's hard to convey
Yes.
the energy or the synergy when you're on your phone or on your computer watching someone rip
Yeah.
packs of cards open with characters on them,
Yes.
right?
And it's not just geeks.
Sounds pretty crazy,
It
right?
does. It really does.
But
yes. But no
we
more
would
or
we
less crazy than standing with 80,000 people rooting for the blue team versus the red team, or
yeah.
or watching it on TV and throwing your beer at the wall because your team just got scored again. Or what? It's the same game, different
Yeah.
sort of realm, different dimension, so to speak. Like, it's just, we're all looking hungry for connection. It's kind of easy-ish to find if you're open, and that's the way the world works, right? And so even for my book, or what we're doing with the cars, or even what we're doing right now, it's all about like connecting, right? It's just
Mm.
literally, and so that's why I'm touched by the community and the book. Like, but genuinely, we're all just connected, right? In some way, shape, or form. Like, we've met in real life, we've talked, we had a beer. It was great getting to know you, but this to me is almost as good as that, maybe better, right? Like, and when you're hundreds of miles away, so it works. It's like, we could argue all day why it shouldn't, is it real? It doesn't matter. It's real.
Mm.
Like,
You're absolutely right,
right.
and it's the world we live in.
Like, I'm getting choked up from a conversation. I'm staring into some little green dot on a Macintosh laptop. I mean, it's surreal, but it's real, right? I mean, like, so, but why question it? Just like enjoy it, dive in. The water's warm, right? Just have a good time, and that's don't like. I think so many people get caught up in the why is it, why should it, could it be, like, just. I mean, it's easy for me to say, but like, put all that aside, just have a good time. Like, Chelsea and Tom and I have all met based on and I Soggy opens a box in November. I demanding me and and fast forward, and we've all shaken hands and hugged, right? So that's how it works.
They were at your house, right?
Yes. We did it right here in the living room, right? We good Wi-Fi, and we had a show. We signed a pumpkin and a gourd and open cards.
I told Chelsea, I said, "Hey, don't don't look into his eyes for too long because he'll strange things will happen, and we don't want to have that conversation
Yes, Rob gave
with
me
the kids.
the Riz compliment. I was like, yes. I mean, I wasn't even sure what Riz was when we were talking about it, but it was nice to know that I had it.
Yes,
Nobody had said that. I mean, I think maybe the kids used the word, but yeah, it was really fun to hear.
that's fun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she didn't look in my eyes, did she?
I don't. She came home, so I don't think
Everything's
so.
good.
We took a detour here. Selfishly,
Yes.
I don't know if you know this. I part of this VFam Sessions project. One of the pillars of it is a book. Um, I'm taking all these conversations, making it into an oral history book. So,
It's like the
from
Howard
time
Stern
to
book,
time, I
right?
get
Is that
super
like
inspired
do you know the Howard Stern?
and do deep dives.
Yes.
A- and learn about more processes, how authors work. And I heard that you wrote this in a different perspective, right?
So
As your 8-year-old self, and
yes, exactly.
you used Slurpees to help put you in the mindset.
Yeah, so I was like, I wanted to make my book different, and I wanted the emotion to be more real. And some of the people who read the book before it came out said it was visceral emotion, which I thought was really good. I was like, okay, nailed that. But in essence, in order to get in the head of 8-year-old me, 10-year-old me, to really write the book, kind of like the book was written as it was happening to young me, right? That's how that was my goal. That's how I went about it. So I would go to 7-Eleven and get Slurpees because I was such a Slurpee hound. I mean, every day I would walk home from school and get a Slurpee almost every day in South Florida after school. Um, there's like a thing called Can of Sunshine, which was like some tchotchke thing at the drugstore for 79 cents. It was a can of Florida Sunshine, which was probably just some marketing gimmick. I don't think there was sunshine in the can. Maybe, I don't know. And
It was a drink?
no, it was just like literally like you would buy a can of beans and open it up and it would be empty.
A can of
A
air.
can of sunshine. I mean, it was sunshine, bro.
An empty.
I mean, 79
Wow.
cents, you damn well bet I was getting sunshine. And so I bought things from that era and I had them on my desk so that when I was writing the book, I could bring myself back to get into the head of that me. And it's funny, literally sitting right here on this couch, like right there, one day when I was writing one of the chapters, I was so immersed in the writing of the chapter that my son came through the hallway over here. And for a split second, I was in my house as a kid. Like for a second, like a blink of an eye, that quick, I thought I was there for a moment. It was like time travel, right? It was so much fun. Like I was like, oh, I want to do that again, right? So real time travel, but without any Marvel technology. So it felt, even for me, I think I wanted the emotion to be real. So if you're reading the book, I wanted you to feel as much as possible what I was feeling. And so how do I capture that? How do I create that? Right? Like if you're directing a movie or if you're an actor, getting into the mode. So that was how I did it. Even cards, I bought wacky packs. I went to Economy Candy and I bought some of the old stickers from 1978 or 1982 or whatever. And had that stuff around.
So
And
you went all in.
what's that?
So you were
To draw
going
off
all
of it
in to
almost.
put yourself on that.
I'm
Not maybe not all in, but
oh yeah. I'm an
you're
energy
going
guy,
at
right?
it.
It's all about energy. And one of the compliments when I met Gary that day at his office, he said he liked my energy, I liked his energy. But like it's for me, it's like I had to capture the energy of what it felt like to young me again. I was trying to figure out how to do that. Right. And it's like if this book's gonna work, if people are really gonna connect with it, if it's gonna feel good to read, they have to hopefully feel like what I was feeling when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. Right. And if I could do that, then the book will work. And that's what I was. And also if you're gonna write a book, you want to do a good job, right? I mean, you want to nail that dive, right? So it's for me, that was very much a goal. And if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it right. I'm not gonna fuck this up. I'm gonna nail this, right? Um, so whatever I needed to do, in essence, to do it. And I'm not a drinker. I'm not a guy who gets, Hemingway and certain Kurt Vonnegut, whatever mind-altering substances to get you in the right place to be creative.
Right.
I'm more of the mind, like I'm going to get myself there in some, Slurpees. I mean, sugar is certainly a drug. Um, so yeah, I mean, that was mine.
And you said you were a night owl, right?
Yes. 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. would be like, those are the magic hours
Really?
it's quiet. The phone isn't going off. Nobody's.
And you could just go on adrenaline and motivation. You didn't need like some espressos or anything.
No, I'm not much of an espresso guy. I mean, I'll drink some coffee every now. Last night I had an espresso at VeeFriends office, but well, I mean, listen, if I was feeling a little tired, I'd go to bed that. Maybe I get an hour writing in, and then if I was feeling like in the zone, maybe I slept till 3 a different night,
Hmm.
right? It was a weekend, and I didn't have work, and I didn't have kids,
Yeah. I
So
mean, it was your profession, so you have those muscles.
yeah, and even in college, my best work would be midnight, 10 to it was like when I did thesis papers and stuff like that. It's mostly about quieting the world, and the world is most quiet during the dark hours, right? That's when you get into trouble or have the most fun, or do not, or do something like creative. And also, like, I'm a little more nocturnal. I'm not necessarily a guy who's going to get up at 5 in the morning, go for a run, and get a coffee and start my day. So it's just also knowing who you are. There's no reason you can't get up at 5 a.m. and write till like 8. I think Stephen King, that was his. So
Yeah,
like,
that's my
you just
those are my most productive hours.
right. It's like understanding who you are and your nature, and then working within that. Or you can certainly shift it. I think Tim Ferriss shifted his. He was a night owl, now he's an early morning guy. So he's a podcaster. So like, yeah, but ultimately for me it was being the kids will go to bed 10:30 at night if it's quiet and things work's done and clients are happy and whatever. Like, yeah, let's do it. Let's roll. And also, like, sometimes if I was feeling the mood beautifully, like, you get a lot more done. If you're not feeling the mood beautifully, you'll get less done. But just still going through the process, putting yourself in a situation where you can create. And that's why I had that stuff around. Cues. It's just cues, right? Just working off. So
Anthony, the wordsmith that you are, I would love to ask you this question because we've alluded to the word community. We have the best community around. It's been a buzzword for the last 4 years.
sure.
But what does that word actually mean to you? Community.
It's relationships. Right? It's just really, it's, like we're having one right now. It's like, going to the office, meeting Gary that day, like, it's just relationships. So relationships really do run the world. That's my motto right. So it's just, but ultimately the community it's one-on-one, and then it's one on many, and then it's many, many, but it's all like, you're either like swimming with a buddy in the pool, or you're swimming with a bunch of people in the pool. You're still all having a fun time, right? So that's what we're doing. But it's really about relationships that you're building slowly or quickly, depending on. You can go away for a weekend with a bunch of people in Europe, and the end of the weekend you're all buddies. You feel like family, right? That happens. And then, or as we've done within the world of the VeeFriends community, you're building relationships to some degree digitally, and then it turns into in real life. And so maybe it's a little slower, but yeah, it's just building. It's really like a one by one thing that just multiplies, right? So, and that is a community. A community is a bunch of two people, and then 4 people, and on it goes. So,
What character do you want to spend? What character do you need to spend more time with? Uh, out of the 251 VeeFriend characters and their traits, what trait do you need to embody a little bit more right now in April 2025?
let's see which one. I guess I'm going to go with common sense Cal. Just lean a little more into the common sense. Like, you could probably get that I'm an energy guy. I like the intangibles. I like the not knowing, right? So maybe leaning a little more into common sense, and like, trust what works, and then build on top of that, rather than leaning a little more into the because the book was such like a creative endeavor, almost magical, right? So having just done that, like, I'm more in that understanding that there's like, I really dig the not knowing as I've gotten older, like the not knowing how this conversation was going to go. Right, I was tired from last night. Oh, am I going to have the energy for it? Blah, blah, blah. And then here I am. Obviously, the energy is here, right? So
You're ripping.
thanks, but literally like 5 minutes before we got on, that wasn't what was happening in my head. It wasn't big. It's just like I'm tired and I was up late last night and I was at the and all those things. But then, so I feel like um, there's some common sense there that I'm not, grasping enough. Like understanding that it's all going to be fine, but not finds that such a silly word. It's all going to be good, great, whatever. And so yeah, I could lean a little bit more to common sense, a little more like just trusting that it's
The common sense would be to just go to bed when we're done with this.
fair enough. You got it.
But great answer though. No one's ever said common sense, Cal.
Yeah, I mean yeah, it's fun to, and even not knowing what I was going to say was like kind of fun. I used to do live TV, and it was so much fun to answer a question that you didn't know you were going to get. And I know that probably freaks people out. Some people hate, some people live speaking or speaking in front of a crowd is worse than death. It's a bigger fear. But I actually enjoy I used to wait tables when I was in high school and college at a Houlihan's, and sometimes the customers would come in and they'd be really difficult customers. And I learned to enjoy that. Like, okay, can I turn this person around? Can I get them to smile? Like,
I love gamifying that. Yeah.
And like I really leaned into that. And I think as a kid with a stepdad at the time, who was emotionally difficult, like I had to learn to manage others' emotions around me, right? So then I carried that into my adulthood, and so turned that into like a strength, because it's something I had to do as a kid, and I guess I did do it okay. And so then now as I get older, I just totally enjoy the challenge of a good, that's the phrase "fuck around and find out," right? So like, let's just find out. Ooh, what's gonna happen, right? So, and I think when I was younger, for sure, that would not be a welcome thought, but it is now. So,
I'm gonna give you a question that I don't think you knew was coming. How many serious offers did you get on your absolutely legendary Pristine 10 Diamond Series 1 Empathy
I mean,
Elephant?
serious offers, none. No serious
Really?
offers. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there were some floaty conversations, but I never heard a number. Like maybe like a feel out conversation or two, but not.
Adam from VeeFriends never
I don't
reached
know.
out.
Actually, Gary grabbed the card last night. He was like, "I forgot this is a perfect 10 or the not pristine 10," or
Oh,
maybe he
you
didn't know,
brought it.
whatever. It was just like, yeah, no, and maybe there's an element of like I didn't seem to want to sell it, so maybe that's why the conversations didn't come my way. So yeah,
That is such an epic card.
thanks.
Definitely hold on to that.
I got nervous because Adam picked it up to hold it because he was going to put it in front of me, and I didn't know where it went. I was like, "Where's the cell?" So
Yeah, you got to put a tag on that thing.
yeah, beep beep beep.
Anthony, I can't thank you enough for coming on. We're like, I didn't do anything, but I'm just like so proud to know someone that has gone through this process, and to watch your excitement, hyping it up, and promoting it
Hype is real.
on Cronebridge and everywhere. It's just been super fun, and I think the most exciting part is gonna be the random people that come to you with a
Right.
story about it, and hopefully we have you hear some full circle, you know, just effects of it,
Yeah, I mean,
and
I've
I
gotten
know
a
it's
few
coming.
already. Well, I would if when you're diving into the book, let me know. I'm happy to help. I'll give you some guidance and even inspiration if I can provide.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to go into the weeds, but when I'm in that process, I feel called to go in different directions
Call
and be a
to is
little bit
good.
more
That's a good phrase. I like that.
creative. Um, can't thank you enough. I want to do our last segment here, and then maybe an additional little game. It's called Micro Macro Spitfire. So you might be familiar with it. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of random rapid fire
Yes.
questions, one word answers. Answer micro if you want to elaborate, or general.
So
In
if
general,
I say
in the
micro,
macro.
just one word. If I say macro, I could go on. All right.
Here we go.
Okay.
Favorite teacher you had and one reason why.
Miss Shelton, because I had a big crush.
If What was your favorite IP as a kid?
Atari.
Atari. All right. If we walked into 14, 15, 16-year-old Anthony's bedroom, what poster is on the wall?
Farrah Fawcett.
Favorite movie?
Arthur.
Secret talent you have that most people don't know?
Running. I've run a marathon.
Running.
I ran a marathon 10 years ago. So.
All right. If it was illegal to have more than one social media application on your phone, what is the one that you would keep
Twitter,
legally?
for sure. I think I've tweeted 20,000 times. I have an addiction.
Bougie hotel or hiking, camping in the woods?
Bougie hotel.
Favorite concert?
David Lee Roth. It was many years ago. I was mind blown. Steel drums, running around it like it was amazing. That guy was a one man crazy show.
We may have just alluded to it, but your favorite piece of physical VeeFriends memorabilia?
Well, the Hangout Hall, remember the hawk,
The physical hawk.
the hawk figurine that Gary gave me yesterday. Immediately, my favorite.
That's a cool one.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw that.
That immediately jumps the line. Yeah.
Wine, beer, or coffee?
Wine.
The Paper Hands pony or the koala of 2025?
Paper Hands.
I'm talking book game.
Paper Hands.
Interesting. Why that one?
It just feels more iconic to me. I don't even know which one is more valuable, but I like the iconicness of the pony. So it just feels more like a North Star.
We're not having a VCon this year, but what city do you, hi Anthony, think the next VCon should be in?
Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. You were all over that one. Why?
Because we would
Why
own
Columbus?
it. Like, it's a small enough town, but big enough. It's the middle of the country. It's one of the places I used to travel a lot for work and to small-ish towns like that, covering the economy for the Federal Reserve for Bloomberg. And I don't know, I've had a fondness for Indianapolis, Columbus, Memphis, certain towns where you would go that you might not pay to go on vacation, but if someone else is getting you there, you're like, wow, this is a really cool place. It's like the bars, the people, the restaurants. Like Columbus, Ohio. I don't know if there's a big enough venue there, but if we could just take over the town, and also the people there are just cool and sweet. I don't know. Yeah. And I do like the middle of the country aspect of a Minneapolis or so that was partially why I came up with Columbus.
Gotcha. I'm with you. Gratitude Gorilla or Patient Pig?
Gratitude Gorilla.
If your next book is an autobiography, what's it called?
High school.
Would you rather have a 2-hour group dinner experience with Gary, you and 8 or 9 other people, or a 15-minute one-on-one?
15 minutes.
Oh yeah, you did well last time.
It was fun. Yeah.
So let's run it back.
Yeah.
And
it was fun.
You know, you've had some time with him, of course, but if he had to answer one question, if you got one question, you had to answer completely honestly, what would you ask him?
What was it like to be a kid? Were you picked on? Was it rough as a kid coming from an immigrant family in grade school? He's never really talked about that, and it's something I'm curious about. I almost asked him last night, but we got pinballed away from that. Like, it was in my head to ask, and then ping pong of the night just poof, it went somewhere else.
He's talked about it a little bit. He rarely does. You're absolutely right. But he talks a little bit. And one story he shared that he did get like really bullied.
Yeah.
When they,
because like when we were in at any age when you're in grade school, like a kid from another country or who appears to be from some place is going to get picked on, right? And so, yeah, just he's such a good guy and such a cool character. I'm just wondering, did that build strength? Was that part of his resilience, or not? Or maybe he quickly made friends, right? Maybe he didn't. Yeah, so it's just that's what I'm curious about.
Mm,
Having written a book about grade school myself, it just makes it's a very natural question.
totally. It's a huge part to it. And no one can really escape it. Um, Anthony, thank you so much. Chat, I've been missing the chat. I don't know what's going
Dude,
on.
this was great.